Experiments in Time is one of the most ambitious projects ever initiated by humankind. The outcomes of the project are so profound and so far-reaching, it would be impossible for me to try and quantify even a small percentage of them within this short video. What I can say is our generation's present knowledge of existing sciences and technologies will expand at an exponential rate within a decade of today as a direct result of the Experiments in Time project. Every industry sector, including health and education, along with the global economy, will be dramatically transformed by these quantum leaps of knowledge. However, it is the fact that Experiments in Time will hand to our generation the necessary advanced sciences and technologies to put an end to global warming, which will absolutely guarantee its success. If there was one technology, future generations would be prepared to authorize their governments to spend any amount of money to develop, it would surely have to be a technology which would allow them to communicate back through time with today's leaders, allowing them to transfer advanced technologies which could put a halt to global warming and save their future. Failure by future physicists to achieve this goal will result in tens of millions of deaths in disasters and wars, and an environmental bill of such unimaginable enormity it will surely decimate the global economy for centuries. So the expenditure by future governments of, let's say, $1 trillion or more to develop the transmissions across time technologies will pale to insignificance against the cost of failure. Now, I know many of you are probably thinking, he's crazy. However, let me answer this by saying, physicists of today will never have to develop any of the technologies required to send a transmission back through time. Sure, they will need to start researching them, but it is not an imperative that they develop them. The real question we must ask ourselves before we commit to the Experiments in Time project is, do we believe in 1,000 years from now, physicists utilizing sciences and technologies we couldn't even begin to imagine today will develop the necessary sciences and technologies needed to transmit signals across time? Surely our answer has to be, of course they will. We can't make the mistake of believing that our generation marks the peak and therefore the end of human invention and discovery. Humankind at present only has an understanding of a very small number of sciences which make up our universe. We still have centuries of discoveries and invention ahead of us. So why aren't we being bombarded by hundreds of transmissions from future generations today? There are a couple of quite compelling reasons why, but let's explore the most obvious one first. With our present understanding of communication devices, it would be fair to conclude that transmissions of any kind, no matter what the medium, radio, sound, light, would require a compatible receiver to recognize or be received. For example, no matter where you are standing in the world right now, you are being bombarded by thousands of different types of transmissions. You can't see them, so they all go unnoticed until you switch on some type of receiving device. Depending on the type of receiver you switch on determines the type of broadcast you are able to receive. Radio, mobile phone calls, television, two-way radio communication, satellite transmissions, the list goes on and on. Therefore, isn't it logical to conclude that future scientists and developers would require civilizations in their past to construct receivers of some description which were capable of receiving their transmissions across time before any transmissions could possibly begin to occur? So what type of receiver do we need to construct? This is, of course, the million-dollar question and the motivation and end goal of the Experiments in Time project. How do we go about developing a device we have absolutely no idea of, which will need to be compatible with the transmitting devices developed by future generations? The answer is, we must try every type of receiving device and innovative idea we can possibly think of. And then, try some more. High school students and university graduates, together with their teachers and professors, parents, grandparents, and workers drawn from every industry sector around the world need to start developing their own ideas for a transmission across time receiver. their very own Experiments in Time project. Projects will not have to be complex, as in stage 1 of Experiments in Time, we are only trying to identify which medium future generations are utilised to send transmissions across time. Is it light, sound, radio waves, magnetism, or something totally different? The most important thing is we need to have as many projects as possible each month for future technologists to select from to target their transmissions toward. To simplify the when or time aspect of the equation, it has been decided to make the first day of every month Experiments in Time Day. Hence, participants and observers of the Experiments in Time project should undertake their experiments and observations on the first day of each month. What are observers, you may ask? Well, nominating a set day each month brings with it some very important benefits. If future technologists find all our experiments are way off the mark, they can cause an unusual occurrence somewhere in the world to try and steer us in the right direction. For example, future technologists may cause a blackout at a particular city on the 1st of January 2015, or maybe cause some interference on one of NASA's radio telescopes. Or maybe they would do something as simple as cause noise on a radio or television or even a communications network somewhere in the world. Now, if this interference happens only once on the 1st of January, it could be classed as a simple coincidence. Even if the same thing happens again on the 1st of February, you could still probably class it as highly coincidental. But surely if it happens again on the 1st of March, it will warrant further investigation to identify and measure who and what is causing it. People who monitor these unusual happenings within their city on the 1st of each month are given the title of Experiments in Time observers, and they are just as important to the success of the Experiments in Time project as the project builders themselves. Google Maps will allow both project builders and observers to record the exact location of their experiment or observation. Each project builder or observer will simply need to record all the details of their project or observation on the Experiments in Time webpage, which we will configure to back up and store the data indefinitely on a multiple of data storage devices. Each time you initiate a new project or observation, you will be given a unique project number. After the experiment has been completed on the 1st of each month, builders will update their project results or observations into that database where we will store them indefinitely. Now let's imagine a group of scientists in 2050 have discovered a new technology which allows them to send, let's just say, a faster than light transmission back through time. Via the historical records kept by Experiments in Time today, this group of scientists will be able to research all the information pertaining to all EIT projects conducted in 2015. Hopefully, they'll be able to identify a suitable receiver project capable of receiving at least part of their transmission. Hence, they will target their experimental transmissions towards that exact location and time. Let's just say Experiment in Time project number 1 in 2015 is deemed the most compatible. It may be not the ideal receiver, however the scientists of 2050 will have access to all detailed historical plans of Project 1, thus allowing them to modify their transmissions to suit. Project 1 may be too primitive of a technology to receive all the components of the 2050 transmission. Hence, it only might receive a faint logical sequence of flickering lights. However, this will still represent an important scientific breakthrough. The exciting aspect of the relationship between the transmitting scientists of 2050 and the pioneer developer of Receiver Project number 1, built in 2015, is that the scientists of 2050 will already know the results of their transmission before they start their transmission. Because the developer of Project number 1 will have recorded all the observed results of his or her project in 2015 and stored them. So not only will the scientists of 2050 be able to read all about the setup of Project number 1, he will also be able to read about all the results of his own transmission. The year is now 3000, and a brilliant scientist has discovered how to fold time. This new discovery allows him to send transmissions much further back through time. Let's say this scientist identifies that Experiments in Time Project number 3 in 2015 is able to receive some elements of his transmission. Of course, this scientist will already know the results of experimental transmission conducted by the scientist in 2050. Furthermore, the scientist of 3000 will already know the results of his or her own experiment before it is initiated, as the EIT Foundation will have recorded and preserved all the results of Project 3 in 2015. In fact, even the scientists of 2050 will know the results of the experiments conducted on Project 3 by some future scientist. Expand this phenomenon out and you realize that every scientist in any future time will know the results of not only their own experiments, but of all experiments conducted by scientists both before and after them. This phenomenon of interconnecting hundreds of thousands of points in time I like to call the concertinaing or compression of time. The other major reason we are not getting bombarded by transmissions from the future is before a transmission can exist, it has to be invented. There must be a beginning before there can be an end. So for a transmitter to be invented, research needs to begin, which will eventually lead to its invention. If this research never begins, naturally the transmitter can never exist. The only way we can ensure this research begins is to initiate it ourselves today. It may take decades of research and development before the first transmitter is invented and built. However, it must have a beginning. A very unusual but highly logical relationship exists between the beginning of our research and the receiving of our first transmissions. The year we start our research will, by our actions, have triggered an inescapable chain of events which will lead inevitably to the development of the first transmitter. This interlinked relationship between the two events will ensure we should start receiving our first transmissions the very same year we initiate our research and development program. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and I look forward to your participation. Not everyone will get it, however, enough of you will. And if enough do, we can begin together building a brighter future for all future generations. I thank you for your time and your interest.